Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters in Christ, today I want to talk about something deeper than dollars, deeper than digits, something divine. Today I want to talk about the 5 laws I used to become the first millionaire in my family. Not by chance, not by luck, but by spiritual law. Because in the words of the great Florence Scovel Shinn, man can only receive what he sees himself receiving. These laws I'm about to share with you are not from the stock market, not from some online guru. They're spiritual principles. They're rooted in faith, spoken word, divine order, and the law of expectation. I didn't just change my bank account. I changed my beliefs, my declarations, and my vibration. Because when you align yourself with God's perfect plan, you don't chase money, money finds you. When you move in obedience and speak your good into existence, you're no longer bound by limitation, you're walking in divine inheritance. So open your hearts today, not just your ears. Because what I'm about to share isn't just motivation, it's manifestation. Let's begin. Would you like this followed by a breakdown or transitions for each of the 5 laws? The law of spoken word is the cornerstone of all demonstration, because it is the very act of creation through vibration. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. This is not just scripture, it is spiritual science. When you speak, you activate divine energy. Every word you utter is a seed planted in the soil of the subconscious, and what you plant, you shall harvest. If you continually declare lack, fear, or delay, you give it life. But when you declare abundance, peace, and progress, even when you see no evidence, you align with the divine blueprint for your good. There is no idle word. Every syllable has weight in the invisible realm. That's why Florence Scovel Shinn taught, your word is your wand. You are creating every hour of every day with your language. Long before I had money in the bank, I had wealth in my mouth. I trained my tongue to speak only what I desired, not what I feared. I stopped rehearsing my limitations and started declaring my liberation. I would say, I am divinely provided for. Money comes to me in expected and unexpected ways. All that is mine by divine right is now released and reaches me in perfect ways under grace. I repeated it not because I was desperate, but because I was building momentum in the unseen. The word always goes forth and does not return void. But it must be consistent, rooted in faith, and void of contradiction. You cannot speak abundance one day and curse your finances the next and expect prosperity to come without resistance. What many fail to understand is that the word has authority. The subconscious mind, which governs much of your life, is impressible and obedient. It does not reason, it accepts. So when you speak words repeatedly, whether in jest or in earnest, you impress those patterns deep into the soil of your inner world. Eventually, those patterns will sprout as outer circumstances. Most people are living in harvests they spoke into existence years ago, often without realizing it. They wonder why doors stay closed, why money slips away, why they attract the same struggle, and it's because their word was filled with fear, worry, sarcasm, or complaint. So I became a diligent guardian over my mouth. I silenced idle talk, I rejected gossip, and I refused to entertain phrases like, I can't afford that, I'm broke, or, nothing ever works out for me. Every time I caught myself speaking lack, I would cancel it immediately by saying, I do not accept that. I am rich in mind, body, and soul. The spoken word must be conscious. It must be chosen with intention. It is not enough to think positively. You must speak prophetically. There's spiritual power in speaking things that are not as though they are. That's faith. Faith speaks before it sees. Faith declares healing while the pain is still there. Faith claims the money while the account is empty. Faith gives thanks for the open door while staring at a locked gate. It is not delusion. It is dominion. Florence Scovel Shinn always reminded us that the invisible is the real. What you see with your eyes is temporary, but what you speak by faith becomes eternal law. I started speaking over everything: my wallet, my home, my business, my relationships. I would hold my wallet in my hand and say, you are full and overflowing. Money loves to stay with me. I am a money magnet. And I believed it. I blessed every bill that came into my hand. I didn't complain about paying them. I gave thanks that I had the money to do so. I said, "This payment clears all debts and opens the door to greater riches." You must speak life into what looks like lack. You must speak victory when defeat is whispering in your ear. One of the greatest shifts in my journey came when I stopped begging God and started declaring His promises. I moved from pleading to proclaiming. I understood that God has already given. It is up to me to align. And alignment begins with my language. So I started saying, "All that the Father has is mine. My supply is unlimited and immediate. I am one with the infinite substance of the universe." These were not just affirmations. They were spiritual decrees. And when you decree a thing, it shall be established unto you. I spoke these words daily, not out of desperation, but as a form of spiritual hygiene. Just as you brush your teeth to keep them clean, you must speak truth to keep your energy clear. Words clean the atmosphere. Words shift the vibration. When you speak love, peace, wealth, and success, you send those energies ahead of you like angels preparing the way. Every word creates a pathway, a structure in the ether, a mold that substance can fill. If you don't speak the mold, you don't give heaven anything to work with. Most people are waiting for evidence before they speak with confidence. But that's not how spiritual law works. You speak first, then the evidence appears. The spoken word is the spark that lights the fire. It is the match that ignites manifestation. So you must speak deliberately. Speak with clarity. Speak with authority. And most of all, speak with unwavering faith. The law of divine right timing is one of the most misunderstood yet most powerful spiritual principles. In a world that worships instant gratification and overnight success, waiting on divine timing can feel like a punishment. But it is not punishment. It is preparation. Divine timing is God's perfect schedule, and it always works for your highest good. When something is delayed, it does not mean it is denied. It simply means the pieces are still being moved. The path is still being cleared, and you are still being made ready to receive what you've asked for. Florence Scovel Shinn taught that your good is already yours by divine right, and it will come at the appointed time, not a moment too soon and never a second too late. I used to grow restless when things didn't happen quickly. I thought delay meant something was wrong with me, or that maybe I didn't pray hard enough. But over time, I realized that the delay was actually protection. It was timing me for impact. It was developing character, patience, and faith. You see, divine timing is not just about getting what you want. It's about being spiritually mature enough to hold it, manage it, and multiply it. If the money had come too early, I wouldn't have had the wisdom to sustain it. If the opportunity had opened too soon, I wouldn't have had the courage to walk through the door. God doesn't deal in accidents. He deals in alignment. There were seasons where I had done everything I knew how to do. I had spoken the word, visualized the goal, tithed with joy, and walked in faith. Still, nothing moved. But what I came to understand is that during these silent seasons, things were still shifting. Just because you don't see progress on the surface doesn't mean it's not happening underground. Seeds take time to sprout. The darkest part of the soil is where the greatest transformation occurs. Divine timing often requires silence, because it is in the stillness that your inner world is rearranged to match your outer desire. I learned to trust the pauses, to honor the in-between. I stopped trying to force open doors and started affirming that what is mine cannot be withheld. I would say, the divine plan of my life now unfolds in perfect sequence. Everything comes to me in the right time, the right place, and in the right way. I let go of urgency and began to walk in expectancy. Expectancy is different from anxiety. Anxiety says, "Why isn't it here yet?" But expectancy says, "It is on the way, and I am ready." This law taught me how to rest spiritually. You cannot receive what you are chasing in fear. Desperation is a repellent, but peace is a magnet. When you believe in divine timing, you don't have to strive. You can move with grace and assurance. It doesn't mean you sit back and do nothing. It means you act from obedience, not from panic. When it's not the right time, no amount of effort will make it happen. But when the timing is divine, even the smallest step can produce a miracle. The world may say, push harder, but Spirit says, trust deeper. I recall a time when I thought I had missed my moment. Opportunities had passed me by, and I believed the window had closed. But then I remembered that with God, there is no such thing as missed destiny. If something is truly yours by divine right, it will circle back. It will find you. It will wait for you to become who you're meant to be. I began to affirm, what is mine is always on time. Delays are divine redirections. And I watched as things I thought I lost were restored to me in greater ways than I imagined. Divine timing is not just about events. It's also about people. There are people assigned to bless you, to support you, to connect you with your purpose. But they, too, must be in the right place spiritually before they can fulfill their role in your journey. Just as you are evolving, so are they. Sometimes God is not just preparing the blessing for you. He's preparing you for the blessing. That's why rushing is dangerous. You might arrive before your character is rooted. You might meet the right person before you know who you are. Timing protects the harvest. Florence Scovel Shinn emphasized the importance of saying, Infinite Spirit, open the way for my immediate supply. Let every obstacle be removed, and let me receive my good in divine, right timing. That phrase became a compass for me. It reminded me that my life is governed by spiritual law, not by man-made clocks. While others raced against time, I began to walk with it. I learned that divine timing is like divine choreography. Every step is sequenced, every pause is placed, and every movement leads you to the exact rhythm of your destiny. I began to trust that whatever hadn't arrived yet was still in preparation. I spoke over my waiting season, not with complaints but with declarations. I said, I walk in divine order. I trust the unfolding. I am ready to receive in the fullness of time. The moment I surrendered to divine timing, I found peace. I found purpose. I found alignment. And in that state of spiritual stillness, miracles started showing up. Not forced, not manipulated, but flowing. Because what is aligned with divine timing doesn't just come. It arrives effortlessly, fully formed, and blessed beyond measure. The law of non-resistance is one of the most liberating spiritual principles. Yet it is often the most difficult for the human mind to grasp. We have been taught to fight, to struggle, to push against everything that feels uncomfortable or unjust. But spiritual law says the opposite. What you resist persists. Whatever you focus on with intensity, whether love or hate, fear or faith, you give it energy, and energy is what expands things. Resistance creates blocks, it clogs the flow of divine supply. The moment you start resisting your circumstances with fear, anxiety, or frustration, you hold yourself in that very pattern. Non-resistance is not weakness, it is wisdom. It is spiritual maturity to know when to release instead of wrestle. Florence Scovel Shinn taught that the only thing you should ever resist is fear itself. When something negative comes your way, whether it's a setback, a bill, a delay, or even an insult, the spiritually wise do not fight it. They bless it and release it. They do not attach emotion or judgment to it. They recognize it as a shadow, not the substance. Because whatever you react strongly to, you remain tied to. This law taught me how to rise above the drama, the noise, the things meant to provoke me. Not by ignoring them, but by not feeding them with my energy. I learned that I don't have to attend every argument I'm invited to. I don't have to fix every situation with force. Some things resolve the moment I choose peace over panic. When I began my financial transformation, there were countless moments that tested my ability to stay calm. Bills would come in the mail that I didn't know how to pay. Unexpected expenses would shake my budget. Delays would hit my plans. In the past, I would have panicked, cursed the situation, or spiraled into fear. But once I learned the law of non-resistance, I began to say, this too is working for my good. I do not resist it. I bless it and release it. There is a divine solution unfolding now. I began to meet my challenges with spiritual poise. That shift changed everything. Not necessarily the circumstances at first, but the power they had over me. This law teaches you how to stay in alignment when things seem to go wrong. It shows you that not every battle needs a response. There is power in silence. There is power in surrender. Not the kind of surrender that gives up, but the kind that gives over. You hand it over to the divine. You stop trying to solve everything in your own limited strength and allow infinite intelligence to move on your behalf. And when you do that, you open a channel for miracles to flow. Resistance is like clenching your fist. Nothing can come in and nothing can go out. But when you relax your grip and surrender, you allow new ideas, solutions, and resources to come effortlessly. I remember a moment when I was in conflict with someone over money. They owed me, and instead of repaying, they avoided me. I felt justified in my anger. I felt entitled to chase them down and demand what was mine. But I heard the quiet voice of spirit say, "Release it." And so I did. I said, "I place this debt in divine hands. If this money is mine by divine right, it will return to me under grace. If not, something better will come in its place." I let go of the fight. Within days, unexpected money showed up from a completely different source. What I thought I lost had been multiplied. That is the power of non-resistance. When you stop chasing what's not flowing, you make room for what is truly yours. Non-resistance also applies to your inner world. When negative thoughts or emotions arise, the human instinct is to suppress them, to deny them, or to battle them with more thoughts. But spiritual law says to observe without attachment. You say, here is fear again. And you let it pass like a cloud in the sky. You don't need to fix every feeling. You don't need to justify every mood. You simply allow it to pass without judgment. And by doing so, you dissolve its power. Resistance gives it weight, acceptance dissolves it. This principle helped me stop fighting my own process. I stopped being ashamed of my past, my mistakes, my doubts. I stopped resisting the lessons I had to learn along the way. I accepted where I was while still holding faith for where I was going. That created a state of inner ease, and ease is a key to prosperity. Prosperity does not flow through tension. It flows through relaxation, openness, and spiritual confidence. When I stopped resisting the present, I became receptive to the future. Florence often reminded us that you must be indifferent to the outcome, not because you don't care, but because you trust. Indifference is spiritual strength. It means your peace is not dependent on the appearance of things. You can look lack in the face and feel no fear. You can see a delay and feel no frustration. You can walk through uncertainty and still know that all is well. That's the power of non-resistance. It keeps you anchored in truth no matter how the waves crash around you. When you stop resisting, you stop blocking. When you stop blocking, you start receiving. This is not passive. It is profoundly active in the spiritual realm. You are choosing peace, and peace is a portal. You are choosing flow, and flow is how divine supply moves. Non-resistance does not mean doing nothing. It means doing everything from a place of trust, not tension. It means saying, I trust that everything is unfolding for me. I release the struggle. I allow the blessing. The law of visualization is a sacred spiritual practice that connects the seen with the unseen, the mental with the material. What you can hold in your mind with clarity, emotion, and faith, you can hold in your hand. Florence Scovel Shinn taught that imagination is the scissors of the mind, cutting out each day's pattern in advance. It is not daydreaming. It is spiritual blueprinting. Before anything can show up in your outer world, it must first be formed clearly in your inner world. Visualization is how you impress the subconscious with a picture so vivid and persistent that it begins to rearrange circumstances, attract people, and open paths in alignment with that mental image. Before I ever became a millionaire, I saw myself living in wealth. I saw it so clearly that it became more real than my current bank balance. I didn't wait for the evidence to start believing. I created the evidence internally. I would close my eyes and see myself signing large checks with ease, walking through beautiful homes, blessing others with generosity. I didn't do it once or twice. I did it every day. I lived it in the secret place of the mind until the physical world had no choice but to align. That is how the law works. What you vividly imagine and feel as true will become your experience when backed by faith and consistent thought. Visualization must be specific. Vague ideas bring vague results. You must know what you want, see it, and feel it with emotional conviction. I would visualize my ideal day, how I would wake up, how I would dress, how my bank notifications would read. I would hear the sounds, feel the textures, and engage all my senses in the scene. The subconscious mind responds most powerfully to images charged with feeling. If you imagine wealth but feel doubt, the dominant vibration is doubt. But if you imagine wealth and feel gratitude, excitement, and peace, you magnetize those conditions toward you. The image becomes a spiritual seed that will grow in divine, right timing. There were days I struggled to believe in what I was visualizing. Reality screamed something different. But that's where the power of persistence comes in. Visualization is not magic. It is mental discipline. You keep seeing it until your subconscious accepts it. Once the subconscious accepts a new picture, it begins working 24/7 to bring it into form. It sends ideas, stirs intuition, and attracts opportunities. It is not your job to know the how. Your job is to hold the vision with faith. Florence said that when you make your demands upon the universe, you must remain unmoved by appearances. Appearances may contradict your vision, but your vision must not bend to appearances. I created a vision board, but more importantly, I created a vision state. A vision board is helpful, but a vision state is powerful. That means walking around as if the vision has already come to pass. It means speaking, acting, and making decisions as if your vision is reality. I stopped waiting for money to show up before I felt successful. I felt it first. I stepped into the energy of wealth long before the numbers changed. That shift in identity is what attracts the external change. You must see yourself as the person you want to become and act from that place now. Not in arrogance, but in alignment. The spiritual law is simple. What you focus on expands. If you keep focusing on debt, delays, or struggle, you magnify those images and feed their life. But when you hold a clear vision of abundance, prosperity, and freedom, you begin to attract matching vibrations. The universe responds to the energy you emit, and your thoughts are a major source of that energy. Visualization helps you program your dominant thoughts. It trains your imagination to be your servant, not your saboteur. There is also creative power in written visualization. I wrote out detailed scripts of my desired life. I would describe it in the present tense. I am so grateful that money flows freely to me. I live in a beautiful home. I serve with joy. I give generously. I wake up excited and free. These written words, when read aloud daily, became visual affirmations. They reinforced the picture I was holding and helped silence the noise of fear or doubt. Your written vision is like a spiritual contract. It holds the energy of your future reality. Florence often quoted the verse, "Write the vision and make it plain, that he may run who reads it." This is not metaphor. It is instruction. A plain vision becomes a powerful force. You don't need 1,000 plans. You need one clear, energized vision that you commit to. And every day you revisit that vision, speak over it, give thanks for it, and live in alignment with it. You are watering the seed. You don't dig it up and wonder where it is. You trust that it is growing. Visualization is not a performance, it's a spiritual agreement. You agree with what God has already prepared, and you hold the image until it materializes in divine order. This practice also showed me how to reject unwanted pictures. When fear would paint images of lack or failure in my mind, I refused to entertain them. I would cancel them with truth. I would say, "That is not my portion. I see only abundance. I hold only the vision of divine success." The mind is like a projector. It will display whatever film you feed it. If you don't like the movie playing in your life, you must change the reel. You do that through persistent visualization, anchored in spiritual truth. You must see it, believe it, feel it, and walk in it, even when your eyes tell you otherwise. The law of tithing and circulation is not just a financial principle. It is a spiritual law of flow. Florence Scovel Shinn taught that money is God in action, and when you tithe, you are not losing money. You are planting it into divine soil where it multiplies. To tithe is to acknowledge that your true source is not your job, not your business, not your clients. It is infinite spirit. And when you return a portion of your income to that source with joy, gratitude, and faith, you open the floodgates for more to circulate back to you in ways seen and unseen. Tithing is not a debt you owe. It is a seed you sow. It is not about the amount. It is about the energy behind the act. When given from a place of fear or obligation, it carries no magnetism. But when given with trust and joy, it carries divine momentum. Before I began to experience financial breakthrough, I struggled with the idea of giving when I barely had enough. But I learned that you do not wait to give until you have a surplus. You give now, in faith, because giving is what creates the surplus. I began small. I took whatever little I had and returned a portion of it where I was spiritually fed, whether that was a church, a teacher, a ministry, or someone in need who had been placed on my heart. I would speak over my tithe. This money is blessed. It returns to me multiplied under grace in perfect ways. I released it without fear, knowing that what I gave was not lost. It was invested in divine circulation. This law also taught me that hoarding is fear, and fear blocks the flow of wealth. Money is meant to move. Just like blood in the body, if money is not circulating, it becomes stagnant. The person who clings too tightly to every dollar, afraid to spend or give, is broadcasting a vibration of scarcity. And scarcity attracts more scarcity. But the one who gives freely, spends consciously, and trusts in the infinite supply is broadcasting a vibration of abundance. And abundance always returns home. Every time I tithed, even when it made no logical sense, I saw unexpected blessings follow. New clients, surprise payments, discounts, opportunities. It never failed. The act of giving aligned me with the law of flow. Florence often said, "You cannot give God." That truth became real to me as I gave consistently, not out of duty, but as a declaration of trust. I was saying with every tithe, "God, I know you are my source. I know there is always more where this came from. I trust that giving opens the door to receiving." And so it did. But it wasn't just about tithing. It was about circulating money in general with the right spirit. I began to bless my money every time I spent it. I'd say, "This money blesses me and everyone it touches. It returns to me multiplied." Even paying bills became an act of faith rather than fear. This law changed how I thought about receiving as well. Many spiritual people are good at giving but uncomfortable with receiving. But circulation means flow in both directions. If you block the receiving side, you interrupt the flow just as surely as if you blocked the giving side. I had to open myself up to receive, to say yes when someone offered help, to accept gifts and unexpected blessings without guilt. I learned to say, "I receive this in the spirit of love in which it is given." Receiving is not selfish. It is part of the divine cycle. When you receive with grace, you empower others to give with joy. Circulation also applies to ideas, to talents, to time. If you want more inspiration, give your attention freely. If you want more love, give it generously. If you want more opportunities, help open doors for others. Life is always responding to your willingness to circulate what you already have. You may think you have little. But if you give from the little you have, you prove to the universe that you trust the supply. And trust is the magnet that draws increase. I used to wait until I had more to be generous. Now I know that generosity is the key to having more. There were times when I tithed and had no idea how the rest would work out. But I always affirmed, "I am one with the infinite substance of the universe. My supply is unlimited and immediate." And somehow, provision came, because tithing does not diminish your wealth. It initiates the return. It is like setting a spiritual law into motion that says, "I give, and it is given back to me, pressed down, shaken together, and running over." That's not just a metaphor. It is a law. And laws do not fail when they are applied in faith. This law also helped me break emotional attachments to money. I stopped fearing money's leaving because I knew it was not leaving. It was circulating. I blessed it going out, and I blessed it coming in. I let go of the need to control every penny, and instead, I became a steward rather than a slave to money. Stewardship means you manage it with spiritual wisdom, not fear. You use it in ways that honor your divine purpose, knowing that as you bless others through your circulation, your own storehouse is continually refilled. Tithing and circulation are not tricks or shortcuts. They are sacred practices. They reset your relationship with supply. They remind you that you are never alone, never lacking, never disconnected from your source. When you move money with trust, you move energy. And when energy moves with love, faith, and purpose, it must return with increase. That is the promise of divine law. The law of absolute faith is the spiritual anchor that holds all other laws in place. Without faith, your words are hollow, your visualization is weak, your giving is mechanical, and your timing feels like delay instead of destiny. Florence Scovel Shinn emphasized that faith is not hoping something will happen. It is knowing, beyond doubt, that it already has. Faith is seeing the invisible and calling it real. It is walking as though the path is already cleared, speaking as though the result is already received, and living as though the promise is already fulfilled. Faith is the bridge between the spiritual realm and the material world. What you believe with conviction, backed by unwavering trust, must manifest under the law. Faith is not passive, it is a bold, active force. When you truly believe, your energy changes. Your posture changes. You no longer plead, you declare. You no longer chase, you attract. You no longer fear, you rest. I had to unlearn the habit of begging God for what was already mine by divine right. I replaced anxious prayers with declarations of truth. I would say, "It is already done. I walk in divine supply. I live in divine favor. I receive my good now." These weren't empty affirmations. They were spiritual facts that I chose to believe despite what my eyes could see. Faith does not consult the senses. Faith consults spirit. There were moments on my journey when the outer picture looked completely opposite to what I had declared. Lack surrounded me, doubt whispered constantly, and delays tested my endurance. But this is where the law separates wishful thinking from spiritual certainty. Faith must be absolute. It cannot be mixed with fear, doubt, or compromise. I chose to believe even when my circumstances argued against it. I chose to speak abundance even when my wallet was thin. I chose to give thanks even when no evidence had yet appeared. That kind of faith moves mountains. Not because the mountain disappears, but because your belief lifts you above it. Florence often reminded us that fear is faith in reverse. When you fear, you are believing in the power of lack. You are having faith that something negative will come to pass. But you cannot serve two masters. You cannot hold faith and fear at the same time. You must choose. And I chose to anchor myself in the absolute, knowing that spirit never fails, divine law never breaks, and what is mine cannot be withheld. I stopped praying out of panic and started praising out of principle. I began to trust the unseen more than the seen. This law also taught me that faith is not a one-time decision. It is a daily discipline. Each morning, I chose faith over fear. I would affirm, I walk by faith, not by sight. I am divinely guided and divinely provided for. Every time doubt tried to creep in, I replaced it with truth. I didn't argue with fear. I ignored it. I refused to give it energy. Because what you give attention to, you give life to. Faith is like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it becomes. And the stronger it becomes, the less you are shaken by external appearances. One of the most profound shifts came when I stopped asking, how? Faith never asks how. The moment you try to figure out how your good will come, you place limits on divine intelligence. The how is not your domain. Your only role is to believe that it already exists and is now unfolding in divine order. I stopped needing a detailed plan. I stopped needing constant confirmation. I trusted that the infinite knows far more than I ever could, and if I stay in faith, I will be guided step by step toward my good. That trust allowed me to rest. Rest is not laziness, it is holy confidence. Faith also requires you to act, not in frantic effort, but in divine obedience. When you believe something is already yours, you act like it. You prepare for it. You create space for it. I began to behave like a wealthy person before the wealth arrived. Not in reckless spending, but in my mindset, in my decisions, in the way I carried myself. I was no longer waiting. I was walking. I dressed for the job I desired. I structured my days as if I were already in overflow. That kind of faith sends a clear signal to the universe, I am ready now. And readiness is magnetism. Faith is also tested in silence. When nothing is happening, when doors seem closed, when prayers seem unanswered. This is when absolute faith shines brightest. Do you still believe when there is no proof? Do you still give thanks when your hands are empty? Do you still walk boldly when your feet feel shaky? That's the real test. And if you pass that test, the floodgates of heaven open. I reminded myself constantly, though the vision tarries, I wait for it in faith, for it shall surely come. I clung to that promise not with desperation, but with quiet assurance. Faith is also contagious. When you walk in absolute faith, others begin to believe through your example. Your energy becomes a testimony. Your peace becomes a light. Your results become a witness. People will ask how you remained so calm during the storm, and you'll be able to say, I trusted the law. I trusted the source. I trusted that what is mine is already on the way. That confidence is not arrogance. It is spiritual alignment. You are not trying to make anything happen. You are aligning with what already exists in spirit and calling it into form through unwavering belief. This law finally taught me that delays are not denials. They are divine design. If something I wanted did not appear when I wanted it, I stopped doubting the law and started questioning my trust. Faith does not need timelines. Faith says, it is already done, and I receive it now in my spirit, whether or not it has appeared in form. That conviction cannot be shaken by temporary circumstances. It cannot be moved by bank balances or deadlines. It rests in the eternal truth that God is the source, and that source is never late, never empty, never out of ideas. Faith allows you to stand still and see the salvation of the Lord, even when everything around you is shaking.